This podcast episode is brought to you by Coors Light. These days, everything is go, go, go. It's nonstop hustle all the time. Work, friends, family, expect you to be on 24/7. Well, sometimes you just need to reach for a Coors Light because it's made to chill. Coors Light is cold lagered, cold filtered, and cold packaged. It's as crisp and refreshing as the Colorado Rockies. It is literally made to chill. Coors Light is the one I choose when I need to unwind. So when you want to hit reset, reach for the beer that's made to chill. Get Coors Light in the new look delivered straight to your door with Drizzly or Instacart. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado.
The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast. Welcome to the Timeline, a Phoenix Suns podcast, back again with another Mailbag episode, as I promised on our last episode. My name is Mike. I'm here with Sam, as always. Sam, how are you doing?
I'm ready to have a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, you sound ready. We have a ton of questions. Let's just not waste any time. First question from John Hajek. And by the way, I'm sorry if I mispronounce your names. I'm going to not do the ats this time, just the names. Is Scory Tory an official nickname now? Is the irony working in its favor? He's referring to a nickname that, Sam, I believe you have used on Twitter for Torrey Craig, and it's Scory Tory. Is that an official nickname in your mind, Sam?
Well, so it's a reference to Scary Terry, which is what Boston fans called Terry Rozier a few years back when he had a good playoff series once, I think. I think it's hilarious as like an ironic Twitter thing that we use, but here's the thing about nicknames. I think guys don't want to be associated with someone else in their nickname, right? So we got to think of a better, collectively, all of us have to put our brains together a little bit and think of a better collective nickname for Torrey Craig that we can call him, like that would get to him, that he would be okay with, or that like you would want K-Ray to say on a broadcast or something like that. But if you're just cracking jokes on Twitter, I think Scory Tory is Scory Tory. I almost messed it up. I think that's hilarious, and I am going to continue to use it for sure.
Yeah, I disagree with that. We need to come up with a better nickname because I think it's great. And
I mean, everyone wants to carve their own path. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to think of an example, and honestly, I'm coming up empty.
There's the famous Kevin Durant not wanting to be the Slim Reaper one.
Yeah, but at least the Slim Reaper was original. You know, like that was a good nickname because it was original.
Yeah, and he was wrong. It was great. He should have just ran with that one. But Scory Tory, how about Scory Tory when he scores more than 10 points? We can call him that, but not when he scores less than 10 points.
You know, this is like I can't believe this is the best example I could come up with right now. But like with Jalen LeCue, how we called him Baby Westbrook, there should be a better nickname for Jalen LeCue than Baby Westbrook.
Yeah,
he should be Jalen
call him
LeCue.
That. I took that from other people, but yeah.
I'm not accusing you of anything.
All right, next question. Jonah Lowenstein said, do you think Zach Lowe is right that our extra gear for the playoffs might be the full stagger with CP3 and Book? What other adjustments do you think Monty might be saving for the playoffs? He's referring to a 10 things column that Zach Lowe wrote, I believe, and he mentioned some stuff about the Suns, and that was something that he said because there was two different articles, interestingly, that touched on this. Ben Golliver, notorious Suns hater, and Zach Lowe. It's funny because I like his analysis outside of when he talks about the Suns. But anyway, Ben Golliver said that he almost said that the Suns' ceiling is lower because there's this perception that Chris Paul just sort of wills the teams to as many wins as possible in the regular season. And that means that the ceiling is already hit earlier in the season, that there's no extra gear. That's the implication there. Whereas someone like Zach Lowe, who actually looked at the minutes that players were playing and analyzed the way they were playing, said something like, if they fully stagger them and basically never play a minute without Chris Paul or Devin Booker, that could be the extra gear that's available to the Suns in the playoffs. And I agree with that, just from a general perspective that the rotations tighten, and you could eliminate minutes like for Javon Carter, Etuan Moore, Langston Galloway potentially, and you could just play with a guard rotation of Chris Paul, Cameron Payne, and Devin Booker. If you want some minutes with Chris Paul and Langston Galloway, that's probably okay too, depending on the matchup. And even Javon Carter could find ways into some playoff rotations. What do you think, first of all, just about the stagger?
Well, in essence, it shows Zach Lowe is a smart guy and Ben Golliver, maybe not always. I think here's a stat fresh off the presses from our friend David Nash, who just DM'd me as I told him we were going to be talking about this, that the full stagger, when the Suns have used it this year, and there's never a minute where both Paul and Booker are off the floor at the same time, the Suns are undefeated. They're 4-0. Granted, not a huge sample size, and the Suns have been great this year. But I do think it's a slight indication that it works. Logically, it works. It helps that Cam Payne is shooting the lights out this season, so he's a guy that you can put next to either Paul or Booker, and he'll provide effective spacing, which has not always been a thing with Suns point guards of the past. It's also a reason, we've talked about this in the past. I know we can put the trade deadline to bed. The Suns didn't do anything, but this is why we were talking about guys like George Hill or Jeremy Lamb as being interesting a couple of weeks ago, because it was, this notion of, can you maybe get a slightly better third guard and just stagger these two? I think it's a really smart idea. I especially think, Langston Galloway is a guy who's played really well, in my opinion, when he actually sees the court this year. But in the playoffs, it's going to be harder to play him because of his lack of defense. I think we're seeing that right now as Monty experiments with playing Javon Carter a little bit more instead of Galloway. So yeah, I'm in general all for the full stagger. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I think the fact that Javon Carter is playing minutes right now, just sort of out of the blue, is a sign that Monty wants him to be ready just in case they do have to deploy him in the playoffs, because there is a scenario where if Devin Booker picks up an extra foul or two and there's just a guard that's killing us, especially if it's not like the primary scorer that you would just put Mikal Bridges on, then you might want to put someone like Javon Carter on them for just a few minutes a game, just to really get in their head and try to track them up and down the court. One thing I will say, the Suns, we talked about it, struggled at first with Chris Paul and Devin Booker playing together. The starting lineup now with Jay Crowder is a positive in net rating overall in the course of the season, but in the last, since it's been starting regularly, has been very good. Also, Chris Paul and Devin Booker since March 1st, when they share the floor together, are plus 82 in their minutes together. So that seems to be working a lot better. And I think this is obvious because the bench was struggling in the month of March. And when the bench struggled before, the Suns tended to lose games because the starters did not quite have it yet. So there's an element of when they do go to full stagger, that's going to limit the amount of time that the two of them are playing together, which hurts a little bit. But the minutes without full stagger featuring one of those two guys are still relatively good. So I'm not fully worried about that specifically. The other part of the question is, what other adjustments do you think Monty might be saving for the playoffs? I still think that there's a super small five that they could be saving.
Yeah,
time that if there's a pull-up three-point shooter, Damian Lillard, Steph Curry, that they end up playing in the playoffs, and they need to switch every single thing, there's a reason you get a guy like Torrey Craig. You have Jay Crowder, you have Cameron Johnson, you have Mikal Bridges. These guys can all switch. That's the main thing I think they're probably saving. What do you think?
I agree with that. I still don't know if Monty's the type of coach who would really do that because it's pretty experimental. But at least in theory, I think it's a good idea. I think you should have the option, and I think James Jones has set up the roster with that sort of versatility. The only other thing I was going to mention is kind of the inverse of that, which is big lineups with Saric and Ayton together. I feel like that's something that Monty has been flirting with more recently, but still hasn't really gone all out and like given us a lot of it. Saric and Ayton, they've only played 46 minutes together this season. It's actually a plus 8.7 net rating, which is pretty good. Again, basically every lineup the Suns are throwing out this year, it feels like, is pretty good. But
yeah,
that
Chris Paul does that.
Yeah, that lineup in particular, only 46 minutes, not a huge sample size. The offense has actually not been that good. It's taken a hit. But the defensive rating with those two on the court is about 100, which is fantastic. So we'll see. I think in a series against the Lakers, we would see those two together a lot. In a series against basically anyone else, I'm not sure if we would really see it at all. Definitely, there's potential to use it.
We will, as you can imagine, we will get very deep into what potential playoff adjustments can be available to the Suns as we get closer to the playoffs. In fact, as I say that, I should mention there were a lot of questions about the playoffs in this specific mailbag that we're not going to answer today because we're going to have a lot of time to talk about that. There are still a few playoff questions just sort of within this. In fact, our next question is related to that. But I didn't want to get too deep into specific analysis on playoff matchups and the way the Suns can play because I think that deserves more time, and we're going to give that more time later. But this is an interesting question from a friend of the pod, Zin Varluck, OG Redditor here. Which first-round playoff matchup would you be most concerned about, Dallas or Portland? I thought this was a great question because those are both good teams right now. The Suns have played very well against Dallas, which makes me feel like we'd be better against Dallas. I personally am more afraid of Damian Lillard than I am of Luka Doncic.
As you should.
So and I think that's a fair thing to say.
You're a smart man for that.
Arguably an MVP candidate. I mean, both of those guys you can make a case for, but I'd be more afraid of Portland if they're fully healthy. And also CJ is making and taking more threes than ever before. And if you haven't looked at CJ's stats this season, and I know he's been injured, but outside of that, they're insane. Like, he's playing at an all-star level when he plays, and that's just changing his three-point shots. He increased it by a few shots a game, so a significant increase, and that increased his scoring. It's increased his efficiency. He looks very, very good this season, which is a little scary. The Suns match up well with both of those teams, I think, in that we have better defenders, and that matters a lot in the playoffs, and the right kind of guys to guard the best players on both of those teams, thanks to the versatility of guys like Mikal Bridges. But I personally would say Portland.
No doubt it's Portland. I mean, here's the funny thing about Portland. They keep defying math. They have a negative net rating, and they are the 5th seed in the Western Conference with like 30 wins and 19 losses or something like that. I don't know their exact record off the top of my head, but what I do know, here's an exact record that I do know because I just saw it posted to Twitter yesterday. In games that go to clutch situations, the game is within 5 points. You've got 5 minutes left in the game. Damian Lillard and company are 20-7. They are doing this insane thing. Like I often think a lot of the reputations that we give players in the clutch are kind of urban myths to an extent, like they're half-truths in the way we talk about certain players in the clutch. But one guy who I think has really earned his reputation is Damian Lillard. Consistently this season, as good as you could possibly be in the fourth quarter in terms of willing that team to victory. So they're terrifying, I think, if you play them in a series. Now, granted, the Suns are still favorites. No doubt they're still favorites against Portland, and they're favorites against Dallas. But yeah, Portland is just a lot scarier because, like, if for some reason your offense dries up for a few games in a row, your shots aren't falling, they have so much shot making. Obviously, they can't defend you very well, but if they can defend you just well enough, if you aren't hitting your shots, their shot making could take over games and they could win close games. Portland's the type of team this year where they could win a 7-game series against the Suns where they get blown out 3 times and win 4 close games.
Yeah. Yeah. I could see that. And it's a scary thing to guard. The pull-up three-pointer, I know you guys are tired of hearing me talk about it. It's the most valuable shot in the playoffs because, I mean, it's the reason people switch the way they switch now. That's the reason switching defenses are so prominent in the NBA is because guards got so good at shooting that pull-up three-pointer. And, the Suns have, like I said, the right personnel to do it. So, in a sense, I'm more worried about the bigger teams than the smaller teams that have these, like, flame-throwing guards. Which I guess you could say about the Suns are one of those smaller teams that have flame-throwing guards as well. But I think we just have the right kind of defenders. The Suns are built very well as far as playoff defense, and it's going to be fascinating to watch, and we'll get more into it, obviously. Let's move on. Nuno Sousa said, assuming this Lakers team keeps free-falling into the play-in, and you know they're going to win the first play-in because LeBron and AD are definitely getting healthy for that one. And by the way, just editor's note here, they're going to get every call, no matter who they play. If we play
Steph?
Tyshawn?
They play Steph? That would be fun.
Yeah, that was my theory here. What if they end up playing the Warriors and the Lakers? But he's basically saying, do we tank? Do we play Tyshawn and Jalen Smith 35 minutes a game on the last week of the regular season? I don't see Monty being that way. I don't see Chris Paul being that way.
No.
I just don't see them doing that.
No.
But, coaches have done it before.
No, so they're not going to do this. Chris Paul,
I don't think so either.
Devin Booker, Monty Williams, all of them across the board would not let them do this. They're going to be men. They're going to keep building chemistry until the very last second. They're not going to do any type of load management. And if they have to face the Lakers in the first round, and that would be a bitch, but if they have to do it, they're going to face them head on.
Yeah. All right. Tim Shilltown, he has a 3-part question. What was Ayton so mad about last game? Do you have any theories?
I have no idea. Can you tell me what even happened? Because I don't know exactly what happened.
I have a theory as to what it was. There was a foul right that he got taken out of the game when he fouled a guy. That was a block. But what Ayton's been doing lately, and the reason he's getting some fouls that he could easily avoid, is when guards are driving on him, he puts his hands down on the guards, basically on their hip or on sort of their midsection. And guards are getting very good at just sort of reaching their hands out, Harden style, into that hand. And even if he pulls it away, it looks like a foul, and the refs are calling that. His best option is to keep his hands up, both his hands, because generally he plays with his left down and his right up, or vice versa. And he got pulled out after that, and I think he was mad because it was a nice block, and I think he tried pulling his hand out of that right before. And what I liked about it is it's the right kind of anger. The Suns were already very much ahead in that game, but he was still mad. He was still frustrated that he wasn't out there playing. It's the right kind of anger. And what he's referring to those who don't know, the reporters who were at the game did report that he was pretty pissed off after that and slamming the seat next to him and stuff like that, angry.
I like it.
So that's my theory. Me too.
I mean, I don't, and again, I missed it like on the actual broadcast. I didn't see any reports of him sulking for a long time afterwards, so yeah. I'm cool with it.
Yeah.
So many people, question. So many people, sorry, I know we have a lot of questions to answer. So many people have been begging the guy to be a little bit more emotional. So I don't really think you can knock him for that.
Yeah, I did tweet a clip of that foul. I'm sure you guys know this has just been happening to him lately. It's just an unfortunate way to get fouls. I was watching Bam play when the Suns are playing against the Heat, and Bam never has his hands down like that on drives, and that's just what Ayton has to learn, and I think he will over time. Actually, I think he was a little bit better at it last season, so there's probably just a little bit of a mental block there where he makes that mistake with just because it's such a split-second decision that he's frustrated with as well. What kind of players should the Suns draft next summer? I'm not ready to talk about that. Are you?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, let's skip that. Sorry, we will get into that, Tim.
Wait. There was another part there. Oh no, there wasn't. What do you think?
There's a third part.
What do you think of the Valley Court? Love it.
I love it. Yeah, I saw it in person when I was there. It's great. It's fantastic. All right, Yemi Ajibula said,
"That's
why
definitely
does Monty,
not right."
Yeah. Sorry, everyone, if I mispronounce. Why does Monty have an aversion to playing Langston Galloway? This is all. I mean, I'm going to give you the runway here. You also introduced a new Langston's Law rule with Langston Galloway.
That's right.
You love Langston. I love Langston too, but I know you've been ranting about this. What do you think?
You like Langston. I am the Langstan. So, and I saw my stat on Reddit the day after. The Suns are 18-4 when Langston Galloway takes to Twitter and tweets out another day to be great, which he always does in the morning. Presumably some sort of motivational. We've talked about it before. They're 18-4 when he tweets that, and he even acknowledged it. Mm-hmm. You tagged him.
I baited him. Yeah,
you baited him, and he didn't reply to it, but he did like it. So he knows.
He knows
the extent of his powers now. He knows he has the power. It's even more potent than Bridges' Law. By the way, if you want a Bridges' Law update, the official score on Bridges' Law 16-4. The Suns are 16-4 with Bridges' Law. They're 18-4 with Langston's Law. Someone asked me what happens when both happen at the same time. I didn't check. I'll check eventually. Why does Langston not play as much as he should? It's a defense thing. I think Monty likes Javon, and we talked about this 5 minutes ago. I think Monty likes the idea of having.
He's testing him out.
He's testing them out, but also we saw back in the bubble, like if you just wanted 4 minutes of full court press, Campaign and Javon Carter together was a perfect formula for that. And Langston he's not effective at doing that. That's really all it is.
Yeah.
But I don't think Javon deserves the 9th man spot in the rotation going into the playoffs. I would much rather have Langston be playing those minutes personally.
I think the luxury of having both of those guys is really great. Because you might need one or the other at some point.
I like how we just don't talk about each one more anymore, though.
Well, yeah, I mean, each one more really only plays if one of the other guards is out. It seems like, and that's nice to have too because he's a veteran and he tends to make good decisions with the ball. But at this point, you got to see what Javon. I hate to say this, he's been weirdly bad on offense. He was really good in the bubble.
He just can't hit his threes.
Part of it was he hit so many threes in the bubble, but also he doesn't look quite. He's never been a great playmaker, but like there's nothing now. Like he's not even trying to penetrate or pass out to 3-point shots or something like that. There's just nothing there. So it's a bit of a struggle with him, but I still think I like it. The fact that the Suns can win when they're trying out different guys like this is pretty nice. And I unless we hear that Langston has like a sore ankle or something, and that's why Javon's playing, I have a feeling it's more related to Monty just wants to see what it's like with Javon. Javon hasn't gotten a chance, and he wants to give him a chance to see if there's something there before the playoffs start. Yeah. You know what I say about the regular season? It's difficult to judge coaches too much on the regular season on a game-to-game basis because there are reasons that they try things in different games that are unrelated to just winning that single game.
Exactly. I mean, we need to, in a normal season, the Suns would be on almost a 60-win pace now. And I think it's tempting. We haven't won games in so long to chase all the accolades and whatever, chase the best possible record. Obviously, you try to win every game, but the regular season is for experimentation. The best teams use it to experiment to a certain extent. We should be seeing different things throughout the year. And as long as you're not seeing colossal detrimental effects from that, it's a positive thing.
Yeah, I have a feeling that once the playoff starts, if these guys even get minutes, we talked about the full stagger, Langston's probably in the lead right now, unless Javon figures out his shot. If Javon is shooting 40% from three, it's tough to say that he doesn't deserve more time because he does a lot. And Langston was doing more with the ball too, so I think there's it's just interesting.
Yeah.
Menino Neymare said, send a shout out to your Brazilian fans. It's not a question, but I want to say maybe my favorite response. It's just so cool to think about people in Brazil listening to us. So shout out to you, Brazilian fans. I appreciate you guys listening. It's really cool that we have people all over the world who listen to this podcast. A rare, sincere moment. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for listening. You give them a shout out too, Sam.
Yes, of course. I'm not ignoring you guys. Shout out to our Brazilian fans. Shout out to anyone who listens anywhere, all over the world. You guys would be surprised to know that like only a slight majority of our listeners are actually in the U.S. And of the listeners in the U.S., well, it's more than a slight majority, but it's a solid majority. But there are a lot of people who listen internationally from all sorts of countries. We posted the map on Twitter before. The other thing that I think is surprising, though, for the Americans is that not even a majority of Americans actually listen, I think, from inside of the state of Arizona. There are so many people in states all over this country who are listening. Myself included, obviously, I'm not a Phoenix native. So, this shit goes worldwide. It's pretty cool.
Shout out Brazil.
Shout out Brazil.
Australia too, because Australia's our number 2. There's a lot of people who
Australians
listen to
hold
us
it
in
down,
Australia,
man. They hold it
Australia.
down. Shout out New Zealand.
That's a good one too. All right. Mike Notham said, you can add one former Sun to this current roster for the playoffs. Who do you add, and do they make the Suns the favorite to win it all? I love these types of questions.
Are we interpreting this as an active player who's a former Sun?
No. He did clarify, and he said...
Well, that's stupid, because that's what I prepared
anyone
for. Damn you, Mike Notham.
I mean, there's one obvious current player that I would have assumed that you would have picked, but who did you pick as a current player? And then I have a pick for the others.
I picked Rashawn Holmes.
Oh, it's not Dragic.
No.
I'm surprised.
I mean, you could pick Dragic. But I'm going to be real. I think Campaign can hold his weight like reasonably well to what... I mean, he's not Dragic, but he can do things. And I trust him to do things.
Dragic had a run that basically willed their team to the finals.
Let me tell you, Campaign... I know this isn't a conversation about Campaign, but that guy... we just put out a video on our YouTube channel. Go watch the damn video. But the guy is good at shooting this year, and I wish he would look for his own shot a little bit more. Because Campaign, above anyone else on this roster, I feel like is that guy who's going to average 7 points per game in the playoffs, but he's going to have one game. And I don't know exactly when it's going to happen, but he's going to have the Campaign game, just like Goran Dragic did. There's going to be a 25-point campaign game where he takes over for like a quarter and prevents Chris Paul from coming back in the game for a little while. Everyone's going nuts on Twitter, online. Everyone's going nuts on the bench for him. I feel like that's coming out of campaign.
Yeah.
He's going to have a similar game.
Even a whole series where he averages 20 points a game wouldn't surprise me.
Who knows,
really
man?
wouldn't.
But my point, he needs to look for a shot a little bit more. He's a great driver.
Rashawn Holmes, though.
Sorry, Rashawn Holmes. What were we talking about? Oh, the question. Rashawn Holmes.
Would that make the Suns a favorite? I don't think so.
Make him a favorite? No, but I don't think Dragic makes him a favorite either. Would
I don't think so either.
Rashawn Holmes is just the ideal guy to inject energy into the game if Ayton is not entirely, bringing the energy that you need to see, or if you're playing the Lakers where you would rather have a guy like Holmes in the backup spot potentially than Saric. Rashawn Holmes would be great. I miss that dude so much. Ricky Rubio would be great too.
Yeah, that's actually a really great one. He would be perfect, basically. I did it the way he asked. So,
wouldn't you just pick like Barkley or something?
Okay, I took the MVPs out.
Okay,
because
all right, fine.
Barkley,
That's why I didn't. That's why I didn't assume that that's what the question was, because I was like, okay, I'd add Charles Barkley.
I think like Barkley obviously fixes the rebounding, but like. I mean, Barkley would be perfect. I'm not going to try to argue against it. But there's like an element of, well, that doesn't fit modern basketball in any way. Charles Barkley. So there's just a massive learning curve.
If Charles Barkley grew up as a modern player, coaches,
he'd be perfect.
Coaches would force him to shoot threes.
Yeah,
I don't care what he says about it. Like he
wouldn't
wouldn't complain.
He shot over 2,000, which was a lot back then.
Yeah, and then he has the audacity to go on TV and complain about analytics. It's like, dude, you invented analytics.
Yeah.
Your true shooting percentage is like the best of all time. Better than Michael Jordan's.
Right, he'd automatically be the starting power forward, and he'd fix the rebounding problem, and he'd be an insane pick-and-roll partner with Chris Paul. Obviously, there's the other one of Prime Steve Nash. Prime Steve Nash would honestly force Chris Paul to the bench, and then Chris Paul would be the sixth man in that scenario.
So ridiculous.
Which is kind of fascinating too. So I threw both of those guys out because it's too weird. Amari Stoudemire, in my mind, was a pretty fascinating one because all those bounce passes that the Suns can no longer pass would be caught, and he'd be dunking every play. It feels like he'd easily average 28 points on this team, and everyone else's points would go down a little bit, but a worthy one. And I think there's a defensive issue there. So the guy I picked was Sean Marion.
Ugh.
It's just a perfect fit. Yeah, he fixes the rebounding problem. He's a good three-point shooter. He's able to play. He's Draymond. Like it'd basically be putting prime Draymond on this team. The defense would be insane. It'd be beautiful.
Imagine Mikal Bridges on the perimeter, Sean Marion protecting him back, just like commanding the defense from all sides.
Yeah,
beautiful, dude.
Like a small ball lineup of
Sean.
It's just crazy to think
Sean
about.
Marion would be so.
Chris Paul, Devin Booker. Mikal Bridges, Jay Crowder, Sean Marion, small five. Whew.
He would be so much more appreciated in today's NBA.
Yeah.
Head of his time.
It'd be awesome.
Head of his time.
Also, the rebounding is, I just want to, he fixes that problem in such a fascinating way because he's not really big. It's just he's such a great leaper and has such good hands. He's able to get his hands on balls pretty easily when they're bouncing off. And it's just a fun one to picture. So I picked him. Obviously, I think you can make a case for Steve Nash is probably a good one, and Charles Barkley. But yeah, Sean Marion's the guy I picked. All right, Mr. 999AZ said, why do you think that the Suns are getting no respect from the media in regards to us being a contender, but Utah and Denver are? Utah and Denver have no perimeter defense to stop CP3 and Booker. Well, we have perimeter defense to stop Mitchell or Murray. That second point is kind of an interesting one, and I do kind of agree with it. I think Denver and Utah are both good defensive teams right now. Maybe not great, but the Suns do have better sort of point of attack defenders that they can throw out there. But I just want to say, I think the Suns are getting pretty good respect from the media right now. I don't know. I mean, Zach Lowe talked about them. Stephen A. Smith talked about them. There was a Ben Golliver piece in the Washington Post. Sports Illustrated recently posted about them. ESPN had a cover story about Devin Booker. Chris Paul's been all over the place, including with Stephen A. Smith on ESPN.
This is as good. Frankly, this is as good as it gets if you're not LA. We can't really be asking for, or New York, who might miss the playoffs now, but are getting, Jesus Christ, how much media attention. This, to me, was the easiest question to answer. There's like a solid segment of the media, a third to a half, maybe more, who don't pay attention to you until you're actually in the playoffs. And they saw Denver in the Western Conference Finals last year. They've seen Utah in the playoffs, at least to the second round for years. Win games in the playoffs. It's not a fair argument. We've talked about this before. It's not fair on these guys because you, as fans, you watch every game, you're there every week, and you want to just kind of fast forward ahead to the playoffs and win games so you get some respect already. But the truth is you're not going to get any respect until you win games in the playoffs. That's why Milwaukee is getting no respect this year, because Milwaukee has been so damn good again after tinkering with their lineup, but everyone just expects them to choke again, that they need to prove it to the media in the playoffs because they're Milwaukee. That's like Phoenix or a similar. Phoenix is a bigger market, but you know what I mean. There are only a few big markets in the NBA.
Right.
Win games in the playoffs, respect will come. It is that simple.
Yeah. When people in the media talk about big markets, they're just talking about New York and LA, really.
Yeah, and maybe Chicago and sometimes
Chicago, maybe
Miami,
maybe Philadelphia.
Miami is not a big
it.
market, but it's an appealing market, so it's kind of in a tier by itself.
Yeah, it's got beaches and models. Like NBA players will always like that.
The economy is made up of real people doing real stuff, and it affects everything. Which you obviously know since you're a real person doing real stuff. Marketplace is here to help you get smart about everything beyond the what of the day's business and economic news. We dig into the how and the why with the real people driving our economy. From big tech and interest rates to small businesses and what's happening at the Fed. Marketplace breaks it all down so you don't have to. Listen to Marketplace wherever you get your podcasts.
Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran, Marvelous Marvin Hagler, and Thomas Hearns. Legends, whose four-way rivalry defined one of the greatest eras in boxing history. Relive their decade of dominance in the new Showtime sports documentary, The Kings, a 4-part series premiering Sunday, June 6th, only on Showtime.
Nicholas Dick said, do you consider this Suns team an underdog story? And I thought about this, and I thought it was a really interesting question. And I think Chris Paul takes that all away, right? Like, just having Chris Paul makes you not an underdog, I guess.
No.
You know, like, without him, the Suns are sort of a team that... And I think it's funny when people talk about the Suns, they're like, wow, Chris Paul really dramatically changed this team. They're so much better this year, yada, yada, yada. Nobody ever mentions that they had the same record as the Portland Trailblazers. And people talked about the Trailblazers completely differently coming into this season. Yes, the Trailblazers were missing guys for a lot of the season, but so were the Suns. Like, it was a similar scenario last season where guys were missing that could have made the Suns win more games, and they had the same record until Portland played an extra game, and that's what got them into the playoffs. But, yeah, I just think that they're not covered that way because they have Chris Paul, and they probably would be covered. Like, if it was Ricky Rubio on this team and they had the same record, the story about them would be completely different. I think with Chris Paul on the team...
The story about them would be some sort of Moneyball-esque. How are they doing this? You know?
Yeah, the underdogs. They'd be considered.
But
underdogs.
I do think they're underdogs still. Like I think that's a fair label. When you go into the season and basically everyone is ranking you somewhere between 10th to like 18th in power rankings, which is like the scale of where we saw various people in the media put the Suns, and now you're third or second. I don't even remember where they are in total record, but they're somewhere around there. Then yeah, you're an underdog.
Yeah.
You weren't expected to be here, but you're here.
Yeah, I think that they are underdogs in a lot of ways, especially because even with Chris Paul, people thought they were going to be worse than this. I just don't think that people will cover them that way. Unless they make it to the Western Conference Finals or something like that, then maybe that, or the finals.
I mean, look, if they played the Jazz or the Nuggets, they're not going to be covered as an underdog. If they play the Lakers or the Clippers, they will be.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. All right, this is from Grat1203. He said, who would win in a fight, one Mikal Bridges-sized Sun or 10 Sun-sized Mikal Bridgeses?
You go first.
Well, 10 Sun-sized Mikal Bridgeses, I imagine that the weight of them will sort of collapse in on themselves and it would create some sort of black hole.
I don't know. My astronomy knowledge is fairly limited. I will say, though, I think one Mikal Bridges-sized Sun would be one Mikal Bridges size. I'm assuming that to be like the diameter, not the mass. So I think something that small in diameter but is a star would be like one of the densest objects in the known universe.
That's true.
So I think that would be a kind of big deal. But I'm not sure.
Two black holes, basically. Probably.
I don't know.
Yeah. It would be like when two black holes combine. They would just become one giant black hole, I think. which is kind of how Mikal Bridges plays defense. All right, Damon, our friend Damon said, shout out to Damon. You should follow him.
He does the work, so we don't have to.
Yeah, he does. At I am Damon Allred. After the Gonzaga UCLA thriller, do you guys regret not being college basketball guys? This one's easy for me. No, not at all. I watched that game, and I'm not a college basketball guy, so I get the best of both worlds. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I'm so bad at scouting. Like, here's the thing that I will give draft guys credit for: the good ones, the draft guys who put in the work and then are willing to admit when they're wrong, which is most draft guys, but it's not all of them. That what those guys
do. The good ones,
huh?
It's the good ones.
It's the good ones
that are willing. Yeah.
Hashtag not all draft guys. It's They're good at what they do. Here's the hardest thing to me about scouting, because I was watching a couple games in the tournament. Not a lot, because college basketball, it's just like I see it as inferior basketball. But the thing that really grinds my gears about college basketball is when you're watching the NBA. Like, when I watch the NBA, every summer I'm thinking about free agents, and I'm going and I'm watching film of various guys, and there's just a consistency from guy to guy that you watch in the systems in which they play in. It's like every coach in the NBA falls kind of under the same tree of a general range of ideas that they're pulling from. And there are various branches and schemes here and there and philosophies, but it's kind of all coming from the same place. And then you get down to college, and it's just totally gimmicky with the types of shit that you see all the time. And it feels like one school could be doing something just completely off the walls crazy compared to what another school is doing. And it makes it really hard. Here's what it does, is why the job of scouts is so hard. Is because it's so hard to distinguish between the prospects who can't and between the prospects who aren't allowed to do something. I think that's the hardest part about scouting, is Devin Booker being the perfect example. A guy who wasn't allowed to dribble in college. He was just a spot-up shooter. We know now
everyone was wrong about him.
We know now how stupid that was, right? But I'm not saying that's not the fault of the draft evaluators. If he
but it is funny.
It is funny. It is funny. But it's not the fault of the draft evaluators if he just wasn't allowed to dribble, and then poof, he's actually the best pick and roll scorer in the NBA. You know, it's kind of miraculous how that's right. And that sort of stuff, it happens in the NBA sometimes. Jeremy Grant, biggest example of it this year. We thought he couldn't create for himself in Denver. Turns out he can. He's not like a superstar now with Detroit, but he's like a good player in Detroit. But it happens so much less frequently than it does in college that it's just like, when it comes to draft scouting, I've just given up. Like, I just let guys like Damon, who asked this question here, he can try and make sense of all the variance and the mess in that, because I could sink 1,000 hours into that and feel like I'm not any closer than where I was when I started.
Yeah. That's why we are not draft guys.
That's why we're not draft guys. But we will bring on draft guys for plenty of episodes before the draft. Sure.
Assuming they're going to keep their pick and all that. But the reality of college basketball is it can be very, very fun. Very, very fun. But most of the time, it's like watching the 2017 Suns play the 2018 Suns with a 30-second shot clock, and it's brutal. And it's just not that fun.
But, Mike, would Gonzaga beat the Timberwolves? No, I just think it's funny because, like, someone asks that question every year. It's always ridiculous.
All right, another friend. Oh no, I'm skipping one here. I'm going to go back to this. Where were we? Okay, impressed Suns fan says, if Sac falls out of the playoff race, what would be some fun is Hassan Whiteside lineups. Basically, he's saying Whiteside. If Whiteside gets bought out, I guess is the basis of this question. Would you want Whiteside? That's an easy no for me. He's just not the right kind of culture guy for this team, and I'd be very, 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 very surprised if they got him. Whiteside is one of those guys where his block numbers do not match up with his on-court numbers. His on-court numbers usually say the defense is much worse with him on the court than, say, his block numbers. So I'm a no on Whiteside. What do you think?
There are very few guys in the NBA who I think it's actually fair to say this is an empty stats player.
Yeah.
Hassan Whiteside is one of those guys. I hate to say it, but he just is. He swallows up rebounds and he blocks shots. It's not actually making your team better.
Yeah.
If it
the
was,
reality of rebounds is there's a lot of articles. Go ahead.
If it made a difference, then like Portland would rather have him than keeping Enes Kanter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But they didn't.
And rebounds are funny because rebounds are not valuable stats at all if you're trying to figure out what players are good and what players are not. Bad players get rebounds all the time. Cody Miner said, what does Campaign's contract offers look like this offseason? I'm really not sure.
This is
the
a
playoffs
really
are going to have a
interesting
big
one.
difference on what that is.
So
I'm really not sure.
I'm glad he asked this question, though, because I think this is fascinating. And look, we're not ready for the complete discussion here because we need to see how Cam plays in the playoffs. In general, I think there's a massive market inefficiency that's really fascinating with the NBA when you look at backup point guards specifically. And I think the reason that is just for the simple fact that there are so many more point guards than there are big men. Like, if you think about it, if you're a big man, you just want to scrape any big man who can just be a body, absorb fouls, get rebounds or whatever for 10 or 15 minutes per game. You have a limited pool of Americans or international players in the world who are actually like 6'10" and above. Whereas there are so many guys who are 6'1", 6'2", can play point guard and dribble a basketball. It feels like almost every backup point guard in the NBA is either making very little money or is on a rookie contract. And the select few who actually do make decent money did so based on the reputation of like they did something in the playoffs, you know, which is why the playoffs are going to be so important for Cam. Like, let me float this your way. Seth Curry. I don't think Cam is on the level of Seth Curry exactly right now, but like Seth Curry makes $8 million a year. He just signed an extension for about that amount of money. Does that feel like it's possible?
Yeah, it's funny because I was going to ask you, assuming the Suns are a non-tax-paying team next season, which they actually could be a tax-paying team depending on how the offseason goes, would the Suns have to use their MLE to sign? They'll still have an MLE, which is basically an exception that the Suns can use up to like almost $10 million. It's what Jay Crowder signed for. Would they have to use that to sign someone like Campaign? And I could see that happening. The ideal scenario is that they don't give him the full MLE and they have some space to play with in there, like something like you just said. But it wouldn't surprise me if it had to go up to that much. But you bring up a good point that the market might not be there for him. You know, just because everyone kind of has that backup guy. There's a lot of them. Like, he's not going to start. I'd be very surprised if a team wanted him to start next season, unless it's like,
right. And that's the thing is Cam
OKC
has been so good, but he's not going to start.
Yeah,
I can think of so many examples of centers who just like played a good playoff series and now they're making $15 million or wings, but it doesn't feel like that happens to point guards.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Maybe that happened
So,
to like Matthew Dellavedova several years back, and then teams realized to never do it again. You know?
Yeah, but I think his contract started at like $12 million or something like that. I don't think it was still. I don't know. I don't think it was a lot. There'd have to be a weird scenario like Tyler Johnson, where a team is trying to screw another team over, which can't really happen with Campaign because he's not in that type of free agency. But
yeah, I think
I
think end of the day, what I'll settle on here, likely range for Cam right now, I feel like is probably around $4 or $5 million a year. But I feel like he could get as high as 8 or 10, depending on how well he plays in the playoffs.
All right, another friend of the podcast, Durag Wallace at Durag Hoops. Check out his YouTube channel. What has been your favorite thing about this season so far? This was actually kind of a hard question for me to answer.
You mean winning basketball games wasn't a sufficient answer after what we've
just
done?
A little. I was trying to think beyond the obvious because my first thought was Chris Paul. It's just Chris Paul. Watching Chris Paul on a day-to-day basis has been fascinating and fun. But what do you think?
Yeah, my answer was Chris Paul.
There
was something about it. There was something about it that I didn't like the way you said it. Yeah, the obvious answer is Chris Paul.
It's it's in a good way, right? It's nice to have something as obvious as that.
I mean, I think Suns fans still take Chris Paul for granted. Can I just say that?
Yeah.
There's something about the emotional connection that just isn't there. They haven't developed that with him over time. I think Chris Paul is playing right now, not like MVP Steve Nash. He's not 31-year-old Steve Nash, but the 35-year-old Steve Nash who still played at a really high level and like led the Suns to the Western Conference Finals. Chris Paul is just that good right now. And I feel like we don't necessarily recognize it. Maybe we do, mostly as a fan base, but I don't know. I kind of feel like we don't.
I'll be a little bit more abstract with another answer on this. Being able to sort of analyze a good team that's as versatile as the Suns, in that, like our last episode where we talked about like switching defense, and you're really, really getting into the nitty gritty of a good team, which you really can't do with a team that's bad because the versatility of a team that's bad is just so limited. Has been really fun to me, and it is kind of odd that sometimes when I do talk about it on Twitter, it's probably the least engagement that I get when I talk about the really nitty gritty stuff. But that's actually the most fun for me personally. So an episode like last week, researching for that and really trying to think of interesting things for that episode is my favorite thing to do. So that part is pretty fun for me too. Anything else on that one?
No, let's keep it moving.
All right. Sam Hollum said, curious to hear your thoughts on Tyshawn Alexander. Is he a PG or SG, point guard or shooting guard, or does he have a chance to earn a role on the team in the next couple of years? I don't have a lot of thoughts on him. We haven't really seen enough. I know you've thought probably a little more about him than I have. Do you have anything there?
Yeah, he's a shooting guard. I think that's pretty clear. I think my understanding of the idea behind Tyshawn Alexander, of what you can grow him into, is he kind of fills the same skill set as Javon Carter, but his body sort of more naturally resembles a shooting guard. So you feel better about playing him on twos because he's got a few extra inches or a couple extra inches of height, a couple extra inches of wingspan, can fill out his frame a little bit more. But he brings the defensive tenacity and the shooting and stuff like that. So to that end, I think he's definitely a guy that you should try to develop. I wish that the Suns had a G League program as of next year that they could send him to, but they do not.
Yeah.
So they might have to make a difficult decision for him at some point. I'm sure there are plenty of teams that would love to like take him in and kind of just actually develop him if the Suns aren't willing to.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
You know, like Ty Jerome's playing well with the Thunder this year.
Yeah.
Like that could happen with Tyshawn next year if the Suns continue to just not give him any minutes and they don't want to invest in the G League. What do you mean empty stats?
Empty stats.
He doesn't have to be.
The Thunder are bad.
Who? I'm
just kidding. Okay. I'm just kidding. Tyshawn, it was fun to see.
You got me
Tyshawn.
heated for a sec. I thought we were about to have an empty stats debate about Ty Jerome.
It was fun to see Tyshawn Alexander score in that last blowout game against OKC. So shout out to Tyshawn. He seems like a good kid, and everyone seems to like him. The bench went crazy when he scored. This next question I have some significant thoughts on. It's from K Law. He said, who is our next point guard after Chris Paul? It could be as easy as saying campaign if he continues to develop. But beyond that, and actually I'll let you answer what if you have thoughts on that, who the next point guard is after Chris Paul, because I have more thoughts sort of expanding on that.
I want to hear your thoughts because what I did, instead of researching names for this question, I looked up John Stockton's stats to see that John Stockton started on a playoff Jazz team at the age of 40. So maybe Chris Paul does that. Maybe I think that's a conversation we've had in the past where it's like, hey, maybe Chris Paul is not just a 2-year rental. Maybe he actually can do this for 3 or 4 years. So few guys can actually sustain their bodies into their late 30s or even early 40s to still be starting caliber players. Maybe Chris Paul with his veganism, though, is the exception. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to hear your thoughts of like who we could actually go get, because if he can't, it's going to be a big problem.
Chris Paul will sign at his best opportunity to win a title when he's a free agent. I'm just going to say that right now. If the Suns are that, he'll re-sign with the Suns. If they're not, I think he will be willing to leave. And no love lost, I think, at that point for me, depending on how it goes. The biggest issue the Suns are going to look at going forward, the number one issue, will be finding another player who can play make and create points for himself and for others that has the kind of gravity as Devin Booker. The only way to be good at the highest level in the NBA is to have multiple guys like that. We saw what the Suns could be with just one, with Devin Booker. And in fact, last season was probably the peak of as good as a team like that can be. And we saw the difference that having Chris Paul made to this team. So what the Suns are facing at some point, whether or not they keep Chris Paul, will be a scenario where, say, Chris Paul does start dropping off at some point, or he just becomes more of a John Stockton that's just kind of creating for other guys in a way that's not quite the same way that he is right now. They're going to look at a scenario where they need to find another guy like that. They need to essentially find another all-star to pair with Devin Booker. because otherwise the Suns will hit a peak. And look, I know some people will say maybe it's going to be Ayton, maybe it's going to be Mikal Bridges. I'll be honest, I don't think it is. I don't think it's going to be either of those guys. I think those guys are both the kind of guys that can make a lot of money and be very good third pieces or fourth pieces on good teams. But I would be very surprised if either one of those guys were capable of being a second piece on a team that's capable of making it to the finals. That's the way I want to look at this.
The only caveat I'll say is I think both of those guys are good enough to maybe be all-stars. Like, I think maybe Mikal Bridges has a ceiling of like a Chris Middleton, and maybe DeAndre Ayton looks something like Rudy Gobert, right? But those are different types of all-stars from the type of all-star we're talking about. We're talking about another self-creator where when Devin Booker is off the floor, you don't have to worry about who's going to initiate the offense. Like, you know, if the Jazz were asking... It's
not even just that. When he's on the floor, too. Having a second guy so that the defense, it becomes very easy.
Right. I just want to point it out. Like, I think DeAndre Ayton could be a top 15 most impactful player in the NBA. But the way his development's going, I'm not very high on his ability to be a creator in the way that we're asking. So, you definitely need to bring in outside help for that.
Yeah. So this is a conversation that I'm not going to have right now, but it's a conversation that is on the burners. Right? It's ready to have at some point. We're going to have that conversation because it's the reality of the NBA right now. And I know there's a lot of people that are saying, no, it's not. No, it's not. Look at this team. Look at that team. Look at this team. Look at that team. Well, look at all the teams that won the NBA Finals. Just look at those ones alone. They all had multiple high level offensive players, and that's what you need. They're the hardest to find, and they're the most important pieces in the NBA. And you need more than one, and that's the reality of it. If you can have four, like the Warriors, then you'll be even better. But, you know, that's a conversation. The Suns are going to... And I know James Jones knows it because I think he knows how to win a title, and that's something that he's probably going to be looking at some point in the future. All right, Yeezy said...
Yeezy?
Yeah, right. We got a question from Kanye
Thanks
West.
for joining the show.
What the heck is going on with Cam? And I assume he meant Johnson. And my first thought is nothing. I don't think. I looked at his stats since he came back from COVID. By the way, he had COVID, so keep that in mind. He's shooting 39% from three, actually better than he was previous. And to me, he looks pretty good.
I think he looks...
So I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think he looks fine. He just hasn't like popped in a way that I guess some Suns fans want him to. Actually, I'm looking at his stats right now. He's like basically exactly what he was last year on a per game. Like, pretty much exactly across the board. Yeah. And I think this was the worry with Cam Johnson is it's like you draft a 23-year-old guy. I still think he can get better, and I still think he's a very underrated defender. But it's like, hey, maybe this is a guy who doesn't have a super high ceiling and he's just going to be a role player for 10 years. And that's fine. You got him with the 11th pick? That would be fair market value for the 11th pick if he's that.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of wish that he had the same sort of conscience that Jay Crowder has, where he would just like launch it no matter what. But I think I am okay with the sort of catch and go game that he's trying to develop. So because that could ultimately turn him into a better player down the line. There are just times where, maybe he goes down to 37% from three, but he's shooting 7-8 of them a game. That I would prefer that. Because I think it would make a bigger difference for the rest of the guys on the floor, like DeAndre Ayton, Devin Booker, specifically the guys who score at the rim a lot. But I'm okay with the catch and go stuff. You know, I am a little bit tired of every time he hits a mid-range shot, we have to hear EJ do his rant on mid-range shots. You know, oh, I love to see that. Oh, why don't more guys do that? Oh, mid-range shots, yada yada yada. And you know, to an extent, he's kind of right at some parts of it and just wrong about a lot of it. So, all right. Bastion Q said, the Nets are the obvious villain of the league, but do you think the Suns will be more portrayed as a hero or villain or anti-hero? I thought this is a pretty fascinating question. What do you think?
Like if they went against the Nets or just in general?
I think once they get to the playoffs, you know, there is sort of narratives that build.
I think they're an underdog who's going to be, they're going to be a hero. People are going to be rooting for the Suns. Monty Williams is a very easy guy to root for. Devin Booker in his first playoff series, Chris Paul. I think until the Suns win a ring, they're a hero. And as soon as you win that first ring, this is what happened to Steph Curry. Everyone loved the Warriors that first year. Not the year that they won 73 games, the first ring, before they were considered unbeatable. And then as soon as they won that ring, everyone hated them. Yeah. So winning turns you into a villain. You almost want to
be that kind of villain.
What'd you say?
I would love to be that kind of villain.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, you do. You want, because when you're a hero, frankly, there's a hint of pity in there. Like, that's what it is. You're easy to root for because people don't think you're a threat.
Yeah.
You want to be a villain.
we've made a lot of friends who cover other teams, whether it be Blue Wire or just across, just the NBA spectrum in general. And a lot of those guys like the Suns. Like, they just kind of like them as the,
because they pity
have
them.
Their team.
Can we be honest? Because they pity them.
I think
they say, "Oh, how nice is it that team that hasn't been in the playoffs in 10 years, good for them."
Yeah, I mean, that's fine with me. I don't really give a shit about that. But
I don't give a shit. I'm just saying that's why it happens.
Once the Suns make it to the playoffs, there's going to be is this Chris Paul's last chance to win a title?
Yeah.
That's going to be a storyline. And we saw how it went with Steve Nash. People rally around that. People, what are they going to do? They're going to root for Kyrie Irving or Kevin Durant to get, their second and third rings, or LeBron James to get his fifth. Like, that's a lot more boring than Chris Paul, 35, finding a new team, a young team, and going for it one last time to really try to win that elusive title that he has not yet gotten. And I think people are going to rally around that.
Reporters are going to love it. They're going to be in there if the Suns, lose a hard-fought Western Conference series to the Lakers. The reporters are going to be right there trying to bottle up Chris Paul's tears in the aftermath and sell them on the black market afterwards. They're gonna eat that up.
Yeah. Brady Snow said, in regards to the rotation, is there anything that you think the Suns need to change to be better prepared for the playoffs? He adds thoughts on staggering Chris Paul and Book, defensive assignments for teams that we can potentially play, etc. I honestly think that in the last few weeks specifically, they've kind of gone into a playoff mode where they're switching a ton. Jay Crowder is starting. They still don't fully stagger, and I think they might play with that. And I think they're doing all of the right things there. And I even think experimenting with Javon Carter right now instead of Langston Galloway just to see what they can do is the right thing to do. The one thing I can point out is to try a small ball 5 at some point. You got to try it in the regular season to get those guys some minutes together, just to see how it works, because you might need it. Hopefully you don't need it. Hopefully the Suns can kind of dominate offensively in a way that they don't need to worry too much about defense in that way, but that's the one thing I would point out. Do you have anything else?
Yeah, well, I think it's related to that, and be cognizant of your weaknesses. Be cognizant of the things where you're going to go into a playoff series and other teams are going to look to exploit. And with the Suns, I feel like that's other teams are going to, whether it be through switching everything or whether it be through playing a zone when the Suns are on offense, they're going to look to find ways to turn DeAndre Ayton into a decision maker because they'd much rather have the ball be in his hands than Chris Paul or Devin Booker in a half-court offense. So what's Monty Williams' response going to be to that, essentially? Ideally, you want Ayton to play through it and prove that that's not going to work for the opposition. Ideally, he continues to have great games. He makes the right reads. He creates offense for himself, yada, yada. But if he can't, and if it's pretty quickly evident that he can't, you need to have a really quick trigger to get Dario in the game, or you need to decide, again, if maybe there's a small ball 5 option that works and you play Torrey Craig at the 5 or Jay Crowder at the 5, or you keep Ayton in the game and you bring in Saric at the 4 to try and bail him out. There's a number of things that you can do, but when other teams try to target the Suns, that's what they're going to do. Yeah. So what's your contingency plan is my thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the type of thing we're going to get really deep into at some point. The other part is cleaning up the end of the game offense, and if you haven't listened to it, go back to our last episode, and we talked about that for an extended period of time. Bread said, how excited are you guys for the new Space Jam movie? Follow-up, has Mike seen Space Jam? Yes, I've seen Space Jam.
You're excited.
I watched the good ones. I'm not going to say I'm excited.
You should feel bad about it. You're excited, and I want you to feel bad about it.
I like bad movies can be fun. I have fun watching bad movies.
No, you're right.
Because all it takes to have fun watching a bad movie is changing your mindset. If you change your mindset going into a bad movie, you'll probably have a good time. And that's really all it takes for me.
I'm rewatching.
And sometimes that means having a few drinks before you watch it, which I plan on doing before I watch the new Space Jam movie, and I choose to enjoy it even if it's terrible.
I am rewatching the entire Fast and Furious series with my friends right now, and
yes, it's a perfect example.
I'm having a lot of fun. So here's what I will say. Space Jam, here's the thing. I have nothing against Space Jam. I am going to watch this movie. I am going to watch this movie, and I will try to enjoy it. Maybe it'll be really fun. And I certainly don't intend to shit on a kid's movie. That's a stupid thing to do. But what I will say is the original Space Jam was released the year before I was born. So I almost kind of feel like I was too young for it in a sense. Like I watched it as a kid, but even then I didn't really get it. And I feel like today's kids especially, are they just going to be like, yeah, look, it's a kid's movie. You know, like kids don't give a shit about Looney Tunes is my thing. So
I mean, LeBron James might be more famous than the cartoons in that movie to even kids.
Yeah, I don't quite get what the appeal is at the box office. Is it like I don't understand if this is a movie that's just like for millennials who are feeling nostalgic, is my thing. But I'm not gonna shit on the movie. Like I'm still gonna watch the movie, and I bet it'll be solid. So looking forward to it coming out. I guess.
I think it's probably going to be terrible, and I'm still going to enjoy it.
I mean, the first one was bad, like by objective movie standards. By objective movie standards, I saw LeBron in Trainwreck. I'm pretty damn sure he's a better actor than Michael Jordan.
You're probably right about that. But also, it had Bill Murray. And Bill Murray was pretty great in the scenes that he was in the original Space Jam. I don't know that this movie's going to have anyone like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like Bill Murray at that time was still probably the funniest person on the planet, so it's difficult to make up for that. I would like a Larry Bird cameo too. Larry Bird is pretty funny. All right.
Speaking of which, can we just quickly talk about? Did you see Bo Burnham was cast as Larry Bird?
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm very excited about that. The whole cast is fascinating. I thought so. If for those who don't know, we're talking about, I believe it's HBO is making what they're calling a Showtime show, which is going to be like a drama, a single camera show of the Showtime Lakers with people playing Magic Johnson, Pat Riley, Larry Bird, Mr. Buss, Jim Buss, the owner of the team,
Mr. Buss.
I couldn't remember his first name. If we're gonna call Sarver Mr. Sarver, we might as well extend that respect to every NBA owner. Yeah. Which Fast and Furious are you on?
We just. Why does it matter? We just watched 8, so we're almost.
That was great.
We're almost done. Yeah, I like how it all coalesces, and they kind of they bring the entire ensemble cast. I don't understand why it took them like 6 films to figure out to like include all the characters. You know what I mean? But it's fun. I think they go to space in the next one. I don't know. I'm not paying attention, but it's a fun time.
I just think it's funny that no matter what, those movies have to have a scenario where whatever battle they're having at the end of the movie, they have to arrive and leave in cars.
Yep.
And that's like the whole writing challenge of those movies, and I find them to be very fun. All right, Yevgeny Kogasov said, when Nader finally returns, do you see him getting minutes, or did those all already go to Craig? I think he can play with Craig.
They went to Craig.
Yeah, but I think Craig is going to earn those minutes. But I think they will probably still experiment with Nader at some point before the season is over.
Yeah.
All right, Eric Sun said, and this is an interesting question, which guy is more important for playoff success, Dario or Payne? I have an answer, and I think it's actually kind of obvious, but what do you think?
No, it's Super Dario. What do you say? I think in general, big men are just more important than... Well, I don't know if that's necessarily true. Dario's just really important to this team. Like, you can see it when he plays.
Here's how I'll put it. Payne is the third guard. I mean, I know that it's a weird thing where the Suns kind of stagger Chris Paul and Devin Booker, but Dario's the second big, and he's really the only other big besides DeAndre Ayton who's playable in a playoff series. So it's going to matter a lot. I talked about this. I was,
the audacity of you to say that on Frank Kaminsky's birthday, by the way.
Well, he's still got COVID, I assume, so he's not even playing. But I talked about this when I was with our friends, the Uncontested, talking about that OKC game blowout. But there's like the way I picture NBA defense, and the reality of NBA defense is the guards guarding the guards, thanks to the rules, is a high wire act. They're up on those high wires, and it's very easy to fall. But the centers, the bigs, are the net underneath. And if the net is missing, it's a lot different than if the guys fall off the high wire at the top. The net is the most important part of defense. The center is the net. They're the back line of defense. They're the most important part. And the reality of a guard guarding a guard is you can't guard them. You can't. The rules are set up to where they're going to get by you, and the screens are allowed. Moving screens are allowed half the time, especially in the playoffs. That means that back line of defense, that the end of that is the center at the end of it, and that's going to be the most important part of defense. So bigs are very, very important still. All right. Anything else on that one?
No.
But shout out to Payne. He's still very important.
Shout
out. A
out.
few more here. Cody Hunt, another friend of the pod. Would you want to cover the team as a full-time job? This is a question for us.
This is such a fascinating question that I could talk about for 30 minutes, but people don't even want to hear me talk about for 30 seconds probably.
Yeah. Would you rather cover the team as a full-time job given the opportunity, or are you happy doing it as a hobby? I would not work for the Suns. I'll just put that out there. I don't want to be in a job where I would be required to say nice things about Robert Sarver. And I do enjoy my outsider status covering the team, in that I feel comfortable covering the people who cover the team. I feel comfortable saying bad things about Robert Sarver, and I don't have to worry about that affecting my ability to get into the locker room. And I can be fully honest with my thoughts and opinions in a way because... well, first of all, Blue Wire allows us to do that, but like even without Blue Wire, I'd be fine still doing this. Like we did this without Blue Wire first, and if for some reason Blue Wire doesn't need us anymore, we'd still do it. And you know, they don't really censor us in any way, so credit to them. So I personally enjoy doing it as a hobby, and you know, I'd have to be paid a lot of money to do it as a job because it's a hard job, and I feel for the people that are in that industry. It's very difficult. Great people lose their jobs all the time, and that's tough. But what do you think?
It's an incredibly cutthroat industry. I'm talking like kind of like media in general is not in a place. It's in such a weird place right now. And I think unless you come from inside the journalism biz, because most of the people who cover the Suns right now, they're not like us. We're just a couple of guys who just give our opinions. What we do is so easy. What the people who actually cover the team week to week are doing, the beat reporters, unless you come from a journalism background, I think so many people don't understand that those people are not, like, they're probably making a lot less money than you think they are. And that's not to say they're necessarily, like, I'm not speaking for anyone's financial situation, but just knowing the reality of the journalism biz today, it's so hard to cover teams, especially when people kind of consistently look for any way to demonize local journalists that they can. And that applies mostly to politics, obviously, but also it happens in sports. Like, many journalists these days just get burned out and start to believe that it's not worth it. When you talk about like what we do, which is more analysis, it's not journalism at all, there aren't really examples of people who can do what we do full time for like as like a full-time job. Like, I guess like the guys on the radio, like Gambo maybe is the only example in town of like a guy who like makes his money just firing off sports takes. But like podcasting is increasing in the amount of people who listen to podcasts every year, but something like that for podcasts just doesn't exist yet. If it does, it's at the national level. It's not at the local level where you've got guys who just cover one team like we do. So I'm cool with this as a hobby. It has to be a hobby because I don't know if the money is there or will ever be there. In the meantime, I'm glad you guys are along for the ride. And I also like the status it gives us where like people recognize that we're amateurs and they don't necessarily expect the corporate friendly professionalism from us all the time, nor do they expect us to have the technological access to be able to do all sorts of fancy things. They know that we just produce content for free. Like our YouTube channel, we have hundreds of thousands of views amassed on our videos on our YouTube channel right now. Some of the stuff that I'm most proud of that we've done is on that YouTube channel. And because all of the footage that we use is copyrighted by the NBA, we haven't made a single cent off of any video on our YouTube channel. But I'm glad it's out there, and I'm glad people have gotten legitimate enjoyment and have shared it to other Suns fans and kind of helped us grow in the process, just because, yeah, I mean, that's reward enough for me. So who knows what happens in this business 10 or 20 years from now, man. But the way it's looking, this is a hobby. It's a fun hobby, and I'm glad you guys are out there to share it with us.
I agree. For the record, I think you'd be you do a great job if you ever did cover the team. I don't know that I would, but I think you would.
You would get
to write.
I think you're right. I think you would get banned from the arena pretty fast.
Yeah, I just, I've heard stories from people who cover teams, and there's things they can say and things they can't say. I mean, there is, and I don't ever want to do that. I like my freedom. Covering the entire NBA as a whole would be kind of interesting for me, but the amount of anxiety even thinking about how to do that well gives me is too much. Like I spent so much time just trying to cover the Suns properly, and doing the whole NBA, I feel for those guys. It's difficult. All right, David Nash, previous guest and friend of ours.
Who isn't?
There a slight? Yeah, these are all friends of ours, really. I mean, I don't know most of their names though, like real names. Is there a slight disadvantage this season to finishing first or second in such an open West race? And he gives reasons why. You find out your opponent late, and they're potentially coming off high experience winning plays in the play-in tournament. And at this point, it could be the Lakers or the Warriors, or like it could be teams that have won championships in the past. The Warriors don't really scare me, but they still have Steph Curry, so they still kind of do scare me. Yeah, and I think that's a fascinating question. It's hard to argue in the opposite way of that. At this, and especially because I'm not sure how much home court matters when there's not it's not like a full stadium full of fans making a big difference. But what do you think?
Well, I think by the playoffs we're going to be almost at a full stadium, don't you think? I don't know. That's totally uncharted territory.
Yeah,
but I feel like we're going to be getting there. Like if we're already at 5,500, didn't they just increase to that?
Did they? I didn't see that.
I thought they did. I thought they increased from 3,000 to 5,500. I feel like by the playoffs, they want to be almost at full capacity. Maybe with only vaccinated people. I don't know. But again, that's speculating. I will say I think there's no disadvantage to finishing first or second so long as, oh my God, please, the Lakers do not slip into the seventh seed, because that would be disastrous, obviously, for the Suns if they have to face up against the Lakers. But if they're playing anyone from that tier of the Warriors or the Grizzlies or the Spurs or the Mavs, I mean, if the Warriors decide to get hot for 2 games or the Grizzlies decide to get hot for 2 games and they sneak into the playoffs, let them. I invite the opportunity to play a below 500 team in the first round. I think that's great. How often does a team in the Western Conference get to say that they played a below 500 team in the first round? In the past 30 years, how often has it happened? A couple times, maybe?
Yeah.
So that would be great if that happened. I think the plan is a fascinating experiment, and I don't know if it's going to work out as like a thing that people consistently enjoy, but willing to give it a go and see what happens.
The Trailblazers last year are a great example of a team who gave a lot to even make it. They had to win games at the end of the season. They had to win the play-in, and by the time they got to the playoffs, they were out of it, man. They were exhausted, and you could really see it. And then they got beat pretty handily. I think they won one game, and it was a 4-1 series. So maybe there's a slight advantage, too, of the teams that had to give so much to get there. Might be a little tired by the time it comes. So, to an extent, that exists as well. But yeah, it's difficult to, it's just a really interesting scenario this year where the Lakers could legitimately be a 7th or 8th seed at the end of the season, and that'd be kind of a disaster for any team that has to play them in the first round. But ultimately, if you're going to make the finals, you're going to have to play them at some point. And, as fun as making the second or third round is, it matters less than unless you got to beat the best teams.
Unless the ideal happens, which is what I've talked about on Twitter a little bit. Nuggets slip up to 3rd, Lakers slip down to 5th, and then the Clippers knock them out in the first round.
Yeah, that would be fascinating.
That would be fun as heck.
There is a scenario too where maybe Anthony Davis doesn't come back, and you're playing the Lakers without AD or something like that. That's still not completely. I assume they think Anthony Davis is coming back, but it's an Achilles injury. Like, how sure? You need to be very sure that he's fully healthy in order to be fully confident in playing him in that scenario. Anything else on that one?
No.
All right,
we got one more, last. I think.
Yeah, I put this one last so that people could turn it off if they don't care.
They already turned it off when we started talking about if we wanted to do this for money.
Yeah. Slightly less depressed Suns fan is his name. Said, what do you guys do for fun? Non-basketball related. Yeah. What do you do for fun, Sam?
I fuck around like every early 20s guy, I think. Play video games and listen to obscure music and watch dude bro movies. But I'm a pianist. I think that's maybe the other hobby that's most interesting about me that some people on Twitter know. I've played the instrument my entire life on and off at various periods. I'm fairly certain that you're a better drummer, though, than I am, having played in a band for so long. But yeah, I still play around with it. Maybe I'll post a cover on Twitter one day. A sunny cover of...
That'd be fun.
That song that circulates on Reddit after Win So Much. Maybe I'll post a cover of that.
Yeah. I love music. I'm a huge fan of music. I played in a band for a long time. I still play drums and then a little bit of like guitar, bass, piano. I play a little bit of everything, but I'm the best at drums of all those instruments. I loved to go to concerts and festivals, and like in a normal year pre-COVID, I would go to multiple music festivals and 10 to 15 concerts, one or multiple a month is what I would try to do. So I'm really missing that. Looking forward to that coming back and being able to do that. Whether they be local shows, which I do enjoy, but I tend to go to a lot more touring bands and see as many bands as I could possibly see. I'm looking at right in front of me a wall full of posters of shows that I've been to. So I miss that a lot. I also like making coffee. This is like a new hobby. This is literally a COVID hobby for me. I bought an expensive espresso machine. And it's nice to have a hobby at home where there's like you can tell you're getting better at over time, and that was one that I started, and slowly I've gotten better and better and better at that. That's all I post on Instagram now. So
that I can confirm that's all he posts on Instagram. I will say,
when you're not going anywhere, Instagram is so like it's tough.
Instagram's awful, man. It's just it's bad.
I used to post stuff when I go places so I could go back and watch it later. Like, I remember that show, or I remember that day, and yeah.
Twitter is bad for different reasons, but Instagram just gets your head into a funk. It's not good. I appreciate that you have with the music more tolerance than I do for not sharing like your opinions about like every little band that no one cares about on your Twitter feed. Because I like frequently just will post about something and it'll get like one like, just someone that no one cares about. But I'm not going to stop doing that because I do enjoy doing it, and sometimes talking about my passion for indie music with other people when I do find someone.
I only post hot takes to get people riled up, like Taylor Swift is bad.
Yeah,
I did when I stopped playing in bands. When I stopped playing in bands, I got more into producing, and I actually sort of delved into producing pop music, and I spent a few years like really learning how to produce pop music. So I have all these opinions on pop music, and I actually like a lot of pop music. There's good pop music and there's terrible pop music.
That's basically what your Twitter takes are, right? Is Billie Eilish good and Taylor Swift bad?
Exactly. And I listen to a lot of obscure music, as you know, because you and I do talk about it.
Yeah.
But I just I guess I have more restraint in sharing those opinions online. All right, that's enough about us. Thank you everyone for listening to this one. I know it was a long one. If you stuck around to this end, I assume that you actually do like us and our personalities, so I appreciate that. We'll be back maybe even after there's really interesting games this week, so maybe even after that back-to-back against Utah and the Clippers, because that's a fascinating back-to-back, and both games nationally televised, so that's a huge week for the Suns. Thanks for listening. We'll be back at least by next week.
Deal's a deal. You won my car, and you earned my respect. Keep your car. Your respect is good enough for me.
Well, cousin, sorry about your car. Yours was too slow for a Toretto anyway.
Your Impala? Are you serious?
Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran, Marvelous Marvin Hagler, and Thomas Hearns. Legends, whose four-way rivalry defined one of the greatest eras in boxing history. Relive their decade of dominance in the new Showtime sports documentary, The Kings, a 4-part series premiering Sunday, June 6th, only on Showtime.